Boris Johnson, Vladimir Putin thought that this war would be over in days.
In a week or so, yeah.
Did you fear the same?
That was certainly the advice that we were getting, and some of the defence intelligence people were saying, look, this is going to be very, very one-sided. The Russians are just going to roll through, and numerically they're so strong and they're so well equipped. I'd been to Ukraine a few times before, and I kind of knew that they were going to fight. And if you've been there a lot, and you talk to people who've fought in the east in Donbass since 2014. These are hardened fighters. So I thought it would be much tougher than Putin thought.
Do you think that now they could be on the verge of victory?
I think it's absolutely inevitable that the Ukrainians will eventually win. I'll tell you why. Because this is a war of independence. And wars of independence only really end one way. And the crucial thing for us all who believe in this cause, who believe that the cause of Ukrainian freedom is all of our cause, we just have to show strategic patience and continue to support them.
What does that victory look like?
Through this winter and beyond.
What does that victory look like, though?
I think the exact contours of victory are very much up to the Ukrainians. We can't be more Ukrainian than the Ukrainians. Passionately, though, we may support them. It's up to them. It's up to Volodymyr Zelenskyy to decide. I would have thought that it's going to be very difficult for anything to be acceptable that stops short of a full return of all the areas taken by the Russians since February the 24th this year.
Right, so could you see any solution that allowed Putin to keep Crimea and all or most of the annexed areas?
No, frankly. I think Crimea is a slightly separate issue, but it's for the Ukrainians. It's not for us to decide.
Do you think that Vladimir Putin is running out of options?
I think that Putin disastrously miscalculated, and we kind of, in the UK government, we all read his crackers essay on Ukraine summer of last year, and we could see that he fundamentally misunderstood what Ukraine is. It was like reading Slobodan Milosevic on the subject of Kosovo, which I'm sure you remember well. Slobo basically thought Kosovo was an integral part of Greater Serbia and the spiritual homeland, the origins of the Serb nation. And I think that's how Putin thought about Kievan Rus and the origins of the Orthodox faith and all the rest of it. And it's a total category error. Ukraine is a free, independent European culture with its own identity, its own ambitions, its own destiny. And he made a fundamental mistake. And so, he's
But if he is running out of options,
fighting nationalism.
But if he's running out of options, my point was about him being cornered. There's a lot of talk about tactical nuclear weapons.
Yeah.
Do you think he would use them?
Well, first of all, let's look at this your phrase. He's running out of options, and he has as a limit to what he can do. Don't forget, Mark, he's still overwhelmingly supported by, whether we believe these opinion polls or not, it's pretty clear that he's supported by the vast bulk of the Russian people. Yes, there's a bit of kind of fraying now in the media coverage, and I'm not saying it'd be easy for him, but there is a world in which he can say to the Russian people, look, we had a special operation. We needed to denazify Ukraine. We needed to make sure that it wasn't a haven for anti-Russian feeling, and that Russian minorities were treated properly, and that the Russian language was protected and so on. We've achieved that. So, I think there is an option. It may sound crazy, but I think there is an option where he could...
And hold on to the places he's taken, like Kherson?
No, I don't think that's credible for him anymore. He will lose those.
But his position is he will not want to lose those. And my question was, do you fear that he could use a tactical nuclear weapon?
I don't think he will. I think he'd be crazy to do so.
Would it change the conflict if he did?
I think what would happen is that he would immediately tender Russia's resignation from the club of civilized nations. It would be a total disaster for his country. So the current economic punishment that the West has been able to dish out would be massively intensified. Russia would be put into a kind of cryogenic economic freeze. And I think he would lose a lot of the kind of middle ground of global tacit acquiescence that he's had. I mean, if you look at sub-Saharan Africa, you look at Latin America, look at Lula, for instance, who's just been elected again, look at South Asia, there's a lot of willingness to give Putin the benefit of the doubt. That will go the minute he does anything like that. He would also, crucially, I think, lose the patronage of the Chinese, and above all, in his own country, I think he would trigger an absolutely hysterical reaction. So I don't think that is a realistic
What would be the West's
option.
military response? Would there be a military response? There'd have to be a military response.
I think the crucial thing about strategic nuclear deterrence and the logic of it is you don't talk about what you would do, but clearly there would have to be a response of some kind.
But it wouldn't have to be nuclear. It could be a very large conventional response on his forces in Ukraine. Would that be something that he should expect?
There are all sorts of options that I know. We've talked about both in NATO and in the P3. The Western nuclear powers have talked about. There would clearly have to be a response. But as I say, I don't think it's going to. I think it's very, 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 very unlikely that it will come to that. I think it's important that we don't, as it were, waste too much time on this conversation, because this is exactly how Putin wants to frame it. He wants to frame it as a standoff between a nuclear-armed Russia and a nuclear-armed NATO. And that's how he wants to present it. It's not.
So
it's about a brutal invasion. It's about a brutal invasion of an innocent country by conventional means, and what we are providing is the conventional support that will enable the Ukrainians to win.
See, I just wonder how dangerous a moment you think this is for the world.
I think that this is a critical moment for the world, and I think it's a pivotal moment. It's a turning point. And I think the danger is that we will try to compromise and find some sort of deal, some grubby bargain with Putin, try to encourage the Ukrainians to trade some of their territory, which will only encourage Putin to make further aggression, as we've seen since 2014. But the prize for holding firm and continuing to support Ukraine is absolutely immense, because for the first time in decades, we'll have shown that we really believe in democracy and freedom, and that we're really willing to support it.
So
and support those values in Europe. So a Ukrainian victory could be an absolute turning point for the world.
Just a final point on the nuclear threat. How much time, as Prime Minister, did you worry about the possibility that Vladimir Putin may use a nuclear weapon?
Well, for the reasons, Mark, that I've given, I think it's very important that we don't allow the whole debate to be framed in those terms, because that's he's like the fat boy in Dickens. He wants to make our flesh creep, right? He wants to spook everybody out with this conversation. I think it's far more important that we concentrate on the ways in which militarily, diplomatically, economically, we can ensure that the Ukrainians see the Russians off, get them out of their territory, and build an independent future.
Now, Ukraine is clearly personal to you. It clearly means a lot. I just wonder, why is that?
I was very lucky. I was Foreign Secretary in 2016, and one of the first things I did was go to Ukraine. And I remember talking to Ukrainians who'd been fighting in Donbass, and I remember going to see this great wall where they have, I'm sure you've seen it many times yourself, the pictures of the thousands and thousands of Ukrainian soldiers who've given their lives for the freedom and independence of their country. And I became very sympathetic to their cause. And I remember standing on that beautiful Acropolis in Kiev and talking about the possibility that Russia might be so insane as to take advantage of the fact that there was no security guarantee to Ukraine, because Ukraine was not given NATO membership, and clearly it was a problem.
Because my point is,
and that is what we now have to fix.
But my point is that 1 minute you were leading the world's response to Ukraine in many ways. The next minute, you were out of Downing Street and out of power. How did that feel?
I think that thankfully the UK has got an absolutely seamless continuity of policy. And Rishi, I know, had an excellent talk the other night with Volodymyr Zelenskyy, and we are going to continue flat out to support Ukraine and to make sure that we're there and give them everything they need. Now, if I can make a plug for what I think they need now, I talked to a friend in Kiev last night, and as you know, the lights are out. There's no water. They're having to queue for bottled water because they're getting these missile attacks on their electricity facilities, and it's absolutely inhumane. What the Ukrainians now need, and we've given them lots of great stuff, from starting with the anti-tank gun, the anti-tank missiles. What they need is more anti-aircraft kit, and ideally they need fixed-wing aircraft to take out the drones and the missiles.
But you don't regret losing that influence and losing that power, because in many ways, look, it was your own mistakes you made, and that deprived you of the influence and the power that you had over Ukraine. You must regret that, because that was something that was clearly...
Yes, I mean, tempting as it is to... The most important thing is to focus not on me or my political career or whatever, but to focus on what matters. All right,
let me put it another way. Is turfing out prime ministers the right thing to be doing in the middle of the worst crisis, the worst conflict since the Second World War in Europe?
I think the important thing is for all of us, particularly in the United States, to remain focused on the needs of the Ukrainian people. And if I may say so, the UK, you're kind of what you said about the role of the UK. And I think it's true. We did play an important part, particularly at the beginning, but actually throughout, in bringing our friends together, in organising those great businesses where
I want to talk about the commitment.
Arms.
I want to talk about the commitment. Let me just say,
the crucial thing is in North America. The vital thing
and I want
is
to come
make
on to
sure that our American friends remain committed.
I want to do that. Just finally on this, Zelenskyy was your friend. He is your friend. Very fond of you. They're even naming a street after you. In a sense, didn't you let them down by the mistakes that led to you leaving office?
I see what you mean. Look, I certainly want to do everything I can to help Ukraine, and that's always been, my commitment. I've said that to Volodymyr, irrespective of whether I'm in office or not. I think there are ways I can be useful. But for instance,
how would you be useful?
I think it's very important that America's been extraordinary. Joe Biden has been absolutely wonderful. And, people may not expect me to say that, but I think America, as so often, massively surprised on the upside. I mean, $45 billion, $12.5 billion worth of military equipment, the HIMARS, the rocket systems to take out Ukrainian.
But you've got the Republicans could take over.
Russian munitions.
Republicans could win the midterm elections, take over Congress, and they are saying there is no blank check for Ukraine.
Correct. That's what I saw. That's what my old friend Kevin McCarthy said the other day. And I think that actually, when you talk to individual Republicans, they see the vital importance of this struggle. But yeah, if I can be useful in trying to get over to people why I see this as such an absolutely critical test of Western will, then I think that'd be a good thing to do. But it's America that is crucial. America has given so much of the military support, so much of the economic support.
But do you worry that that may now wane?
I think you've always got to be, it's a lot to ask of any country, particularly in tough economic times. And the Americans have been fantastic. I mean, the UK's given a huge amount as well. We've given a huge amount of money, huge amount of military assistance.
Do you see any future British government going soft on Ukraine, even on persuading Zelenskyy towards negotiations or persuading him to do a deal?
I would argue passionately against that, just for this reason, that I don't think, and I don't think it's likely to happen, but I just don't think it's realistic, because there's no deal that Zelenskyy can do, and there's no deal that Putin is offering.
There were reports that Rishi Sunak was trying to limit the amount of money that you were giving to Ukraine and the amount of support that you were giving to Ukraine. Is that true?
I think the UK's support has been, I was going to say second to none. It's been second to the Americans. Otherwise, it's been.
So he never tried to curb.
We've given a huge amount of financial support, and I think the decisive thing that we did was to read it early and read it right, and to help them particularly with the NLAWs, the anti-tank weapons in the early days. Those were very.
But given the constraints that there may now be on government spending, do you fear a curtailment, a limiting of the resources going to Ukraine?
No, I think that obviously there's a practical limit on what we can give, both in munitions and financial support, but we will continue to, I've absolutely no doubt, the Conservative government will continue to be very supportive and very generous, because this is should they commit to the 3%? This is pivotal for our future.
Do you think they should commit to the 3% of GDP on defence spending by 2030? I think it is.
I pointed out that under our current commitments, we're good. I think we're already at 2.4%. We're going to go to 2.5%. We continue with AUKUS and FCAS and the Future Combat Aircraft System, right, and various other things. We're going to be spending a huge amount on defence. Whatever happens.
What about the commitment to the British public? A poll we have tonight suggests people are committed to support Ukraine, but that support weakens significantly if it means higher energy bills. What would you say to the British public?
I think I really understand people's pain or anxiety about energy prices and the misery everybody's been going through. But I would just say to people that this is a chance for us in the UK, actually in the whole of the Western world, to get off our dependence on Russian hydrocarbons and build a more secure future for ourselves, in which we rely on our own domestic production of renewable energy, or indeed nuclear energy, and have a totally different future. So the truth is, and this is why I'm very optimistic about what's happening, I think that actually with every week and every month that goes by, we become more resilient, more capable of providing for our energy needs, and less dependent in the future on Vladimir Putin.
How worried are you that Russia hacked the personal mobile of your Foreign Secretary and quite possibly got details of dealings with Ukraine?
We never talk about security issues.
But I mean, that must be a worrying thing that it happened in your government.
We never talk about security issues, as you know.
Is that why it was suppressed? You didn't say anything about it at the time. It wasn't.
But Mark,
was it to protect Liz Truss's?
You're guilty of what's called petitio principii. You're asking me to discuss something which I've said I won't discuss, and we don't talk about security issues.
Okay. So finally, you would like to stay involved with Ukraine. Have you spoken to Rishi Sunak about a possible role?
I think what I can do and what I will want to do is to continue to champion the cause of Ukrainian freedom, of a free, sovereign, independent Ukraine. It is a great cause. I think it's a cause that has mobilized a phenomenal level of support across the UK.
But would you like a formal role? I mean, do you see it? Is it
I'm happy with doing what I'm doing.
a kind of envoy role?
I think you know, this is my job is to talk up what I think are the immediate needs of the Ukrainians. If I could just repeat that key point for our viewers, I think what I'm sure your brilliant correspondents, who've done, by the way, a fantastic job throughout this war, I think what they would agree with, they need more help in taking out those drones and those missiles.
Will you go back to Ukraine?
Inevitably, but I'm not certain. I'll let you know before I go. But yeah.
Last two. Do you feel more appreciated on the world stage than you do domestically? And is that one of the reasons you're going to go to COP27?
I have an absolute passionate belief that the war in Ukraine, Putin's act of aggression, is something that we shouldn't accept and shouldn't tolerate. I think that I can continue to campaign for Ukraine out of office, and that's what I'm going to do.
Are you going to go to COP27?
Yes, as it happens, but that's not relevant to Ukraine.
And final question, I mean, do you still harbour hopes of returning?
I was invited by the Egyptians, so I'm very happy to go.
So you're going?
Yeah.
And you presumably think the Prime Minister should go?
No, I think the Prime Minister's doing, as he's pointed out, he's got a massive amount to do. We've got to sort out a huge agenda. That's what he's getting on with. I happen to have a particular interest. I was at the Glasgow COP, although it's become unfashionable to talk about it, was a fantastic global success. We did a huge amount of good for the planet. I want to talk a little bit about how I see things and how we see things in the UK.
And do you still harbour hopes of returning as Prime Minister? Is it unfinished business?
Mark, you promised this was going to be about Ukraine. I harbour hopes of continuing to campaign for Ukraine, and that is my priority. And there are various other things I'm doing, but that is a cause that is very dear to my heart.
Boris Johnson, thanks very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.